I'm tired of your ugly, ugly hearts. And for many of you that I personally know that say that you are Christians, fuck you double.
Does anybody care about Nebraska? That's the question that's going around TikTok right now. And to that, I respond with two questions. Did Nebraska care about anybody else? And does Nebraska care about Nebraska? Because you see, God helps those who help themselves. And when you Nebraskans walked into the voting booth and overwhelmingly voted for Donald Trump to be president, and now you're feeling the effects of that, this isn't I told you so. This is an FAFO. And I know there are Nebraskans out there that voted for Kamala Harris and did not fall into the trap of Donald Trump. Unfortunately, there were not enough of you. And now the rumors, and I'm having a hard time substantiating some of this, but the vibe that's going around is that Nebraska basically looks to be bankrupt in about 6 months because of the undocumented migrants that are being deported, or just the fact that undocumented migrants make up a large portion of their state and workforce on the farms. And they're not showing up to work because they're now afraid they're going to be deported. So Nebraskans, especially farmers in Nebraska, did you think any further than the front of your face? Did you think any further? Or were you just blinded by hate? And now people are coming out here asking, what about Nebraska? Do you guys care about Nebraska? No, I've already answered it, but the short answer is no. No, we don't. We don't care about Indiana, where I'm from. We don't care about Kentucky losing their bourbon up in Canada. We don't care about Jack Daniels in Tennessee. We don't care about the auto industry in Michigan. Are we all going to feel this? Yes, it's going to hurt. The disruptions in the food supply from Nebraskan farmers is going to hurt everybody. We are not immune, but we can't care. We can't care. We have no more sympathy to give. You guys had a chance. We spent our time telling you, talking to you, talking at you because you wouldn't listen. You decided to vote for Donald Trump, and here he is undoing your entire workforce. And when you lose your family farm of 150 years to a private company who's going to buy up all the land when you guys can't pay your bills, that's the state of America we're going to be in because you decided to vote for hate over the rest of the country and your own good. You cut off your nose to spite your face. So Nebraska, we don't care. God helps those who help themselves, and you decided you didn't want help.
So I'm seeing a lot of people being confused about how, Nebraskans and people in agricultural communities can be voting against their own interests. And I have a lot of experience with these people. I'm related to them. And obviously when I talk about them, I don't mean all farmers and I don't mean all the people in these states. But in my experience, the farmers have been living a fairy tale for many generations. They have been told by the government and by our own society, that they're extremely valuable, which they are, but that they are self-made men and that they exist in a vacuum and that we would be lost without them. And most weird that they don't receive any kind of assistance, that they're self-made, which is a fairy tale. They receive a lot of assistance, but this is the story they've been telling themselves. This is a story that the government has been telling them, and this is the story that they've passed on to their children and their children's children because they want to glamorize. They want to make what they're doing idyllic. They don't want their kids to leave the farm. They don't want their kids to go to the big city. They want them to stay and they want them to keep the farm. So their kids and their kids and their kids have all been raised with this idea that as farmers, they are heroic. They are, the backbone of America, even though at this point, the backbone of America, if it's farmers, then it's completely made out of fabricated steel and been replaced by a neurosurgeon 30 times. They don't see that. So they don't understand. When you live in a fairy tale your whole life, and when you've been raised in a fairy tale, and when your father was raised in a fairy tale, you don't use critical thinking skills. You don't analyze what you're doing. You just keep going with the fairy tale. And you don't choose a political candidate that forces you to think. You choose the political candidate that encourages you to stay in the fairy tale. So that's how they keep voting for the bad people. That's how they keep voting against their own interests, because they're in a fairy tale. They're so enmeshed in it that they don't want somebody waking them up. They want somebody who's going to keep them asleep. And unfortunately, they're going to have to wake up sometime.
My grandfather was born and raised in this country, but because he was Hispanic, he doesn't have a very far education. I think he's got like a 4th grade education. He can speak English. He can kind of do math. He knows his dollar bills. He can tell time. He knows some numbers. But he can't read. If you throw a paper down in front of him, a book, he can't read it. He doesn't know what it says. Because that's all the education that he was allowed to have. When he went to work at a young age, he wasn't making anything. He would tell me stories about how he was going and he was working 16-hour days, 18-hour days in slaughterhouses, and they're paying him $1.50 a day. And then he'd have to get back up and do it all again. Hispanics don't get treated fair in this country. But that's not anywhere in history. That's not in your history books. That's not on social media. There's no white professor is going to fucking tell you that. The Hispanics do twice as much work for a third of the pay. Because they don't give a shit. But we as Hispanics, we work our asses off to make this country better. All them Hispanics that got taken out of the slaughterhouses there in Omaha, all that's going to do is the cost of that meat's going to jack it up because there's no one processing it right now. So meat's going to become scarce. Chicken, beef, pork, whatever. All them factories down in California where they pulled them out, all the cost of those goods, they're not being made. So they're just going to go up. It's going to cost more. But all those people wanted to do was work. They just wanted to provide for their families. It's not fair. It's not right.
Have y'all seen that lady from Nebraska? Don't worry, I'm going to put it down here. She was one of the ones who came out and said, we voted for this and we regret it. She's one of the ones that's actually remorseful, not one of the ones that's coming on here going, yes, I asked for this, but please don't tell me how it's my fault that my consequences are affecting me and not just the people I hate now. I don't want to hear it, okay? Not that we don't care about them. But this one, they're cattle farmers. And I guess Nebraska is on track to go bankrupt in like 2 quarters. Okay. And the most interesting part of the piece that she put up, and I'm not saying this to throw shade, I'm saying it to emphasize what's up. Okay. She says, we knew that they were going to be coming for the undocumented. And here, almost everyone's a farmer of some kind. And 70% of our workforce is immigrant labor. And while we knew they were going to be coming for the undocumented, and we knew 70% of our workforce was going to fall into that category, we still supported this. And now thinking about it, I'm going to say it one more time, and now thinking about it, they realize it didn't make sense to support something that went against their own interests and to put their support in something that is now feeding their own demise. And I appreciate her for coming on here and giving these updates and just saying, with each time, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. Like in retrospect, I can't believe I did that. In looking back, this made no sense. I did it anyway, knowing it didn't make sense. I appreciate her for that. Because we've got too many that are just incapable of doing that. Just incapable of saying, wow, Yeah, I convinced myself to go against my own interests. Why did I do that? Like, that is work. That's self-work. Okay. And that's what we have room for. We have room for people that are like, wow, I now want to look into why I convinced myself to do something that was not going to help me. Why did I do that? We need more of that. We need more of that. And less people going, yeah, well, I'm just going to hold on to my hate and rage and anger, and I'm going to blame everyone else. And you know what? Yeah, I'm going to fight to keep my job. I'm getting a lawyer. Okay, I'm fighting this. I don't care if I asked for it. This isn't fair to me. It's not supposed to affect me. What about me and me and me? We don't care about them. Like I said, they can go fend for themselves. They can go fund themselves. But yeah, it's very interesting. So these states that are already on track to go bankrupt just with the policies themselves, okay? Because she's like, people aren't showing up to work. I mean, whole thing, okay? And then blue states, you know, these cesspool states that are providing all the federal taxes, you know, people who live in states like Oklahoma who can't afford a plane ticket out here for the weekend love to talk about how this place is a cesspool, but they need our money to survive and to support themselves. Yeah, I am all for all of these blue states holding on to their money. I'm not interested in paying this regime. I'm interested in California independence or joining Canada or almost any other country but this one. And I would love to see how states like Nebraska plan on funding themselves when we aren't the ones putting into the pot anymore. We're going to keep our dirty little blue cesspool dollars to ourselves. How about that? How about that? Like, go ahead. Give it a watch. Give it a watch. I give her props. And keep it rolling. Because that's an area, that's a state where the administration is trying to tell you that we're traveling out there to their town halls. Okay, she's in one of the states where they're trying to tell you that it's us that are upset at the town halls. We're traveling out to cow country and removing our dreads and our blue hair to go make red legislators look bad. That's what we're doing. They wish they lived in our heads that much. They wish they lived in our heads that much.
Racism is expensive, and corporations and billionaires don't care about you. This is probably breaking news to many who support and applaud mass deportations. Well, the people in Nebraska, the state of Nebraska, is starting to find out how expensive both of those things are, how expensive racism is, and how much corporations and the billionaires don't care about the working class, minorities, poor people, black people, and other non-billionaires. Well, here we go. So I hear Nebraska is on the brink of bankruptcy. Although it seems that they have found a little band-aid to put on their self-inflicted gashing wound by choosing and supporting mass deportations, which hurts their farms because it takes away the migrant workers who, instead of waiting for ICE agents to go and round them up and jam-pack them into some of those private prisons like Core Civic, and continue to enrich the billionaires while they lose while the farmers lose their workers. The migrants decided to self-deport to places where they can be and be okay, and not be in communities of people who applaud and support mass deportations. So I guess those migrants were taking people's jobs. Where are those people? Come and take the jobs. They're there. The jobs are available. Why are these states, why is Nebraska potentially going bankrupt? Why are so much of America's farming country going belly up? Yeah, racism is expensive, and They say if around, find out. But I hope this is a lesson to everybody that is in support of and applaud mass deportations and mass incarceration. People who, in a haste to get rid of the people they do not like or to hurt people they don't like, end up hurting themselves. You know, with racism and xenophobia and all of these other things that were part of this past election. By the way, I'm not, although MAGA is super excited about these mass deportations, the corporate Democrats weren't too far away from them either. They were busy chasing MAGA to the right, especially on the issue of immigration. So I'm not gonna act like I didn't see it, or that it didn't happen, or that the Democratic Party wasn't campaigning on potentially doing harm to migrants and immigrants either. And at the end of the day, you know, there was also another choice other than the corporate Democrats or MAGA, and there was the Green Party. Most people probably did not pay attention to it, but if you look at their platform, it actually is in favor of the working class, is in favor of minorities, is in favor of the majority of America, to where you could see their platform is not in service of the billionaires, unlike the two major parties, the duopoly. So all that to say though, when you make choices and you make choices that hurt people, and at the same time you depend on those people, you're cutting your nose off to spite your face. And at this time, let me just ask Nebraska and everybody, because I know, I recognize everybody in America is going to be affected by farming issues. However, everybody that supports all of this bigotry, all of the mass deportations, mass incarceration, racism, racist policies, and all of that, and who are being affected now, let me just ask you to pull yourselves up by your bootstraps.
There's a little bit of good news coming out of Nebraska. I mean, if you could call it good news. They have identified a way to cut their budget shortfall pretty much in half. Now, if you haven't been paying attention to the story that's happening in Nebraska, there's a lot of panic that the state is going to go bankrupt. And there's some saying it will happen in just the matter of a couple of months because they have a $400 million budget shortfall. There's a lot of different reasons for it. Let me tell you what they are. But a lot of it very much is self-inflicted wounds. And now they're kind of dancing around going, oh my God, what did we do? Nebraska is experiencing right now at a state level what we're all about to face at a federal level. So I think it's important to pay attention there, because this is what happens when you give giveaways and subsidies and tax breaks to the wealthy, and you do all of these things that in the moment feel right because they get you votes and they get you popularity and they get you all this shit. And then when you have to pay the bills, you realized you've fucked yourself. And that's exactly what Nebraska has done. I think the number one reason that Nebraskans should be concerned is that they've lost their immigrant labor. Nebraska was one of those states that had there's a lot of farming, a lot of agriculture type businesses, and they use a lot of immigrant labor. Whether they're documented or not does not matter. There were people who were not native Nebraskans who had moved there and were working there. Nebraskans, like a bunch of other states, voted for Trump, which told their immigrant population, we're not welcome here. Instead of waiting for the jackboot stormtroopers from ICE to come knock on their doors, the immigrants pieced out. We're gonna go someplace where people will use our labor and will like us and will treat us with a little bit of dignity. So they probably hustled their asses to Colorado or California or someplace else where they could get work and they could be safer. So rumor has it that this was like 60% of their labor force. And when you lose that much of your labor force, you've got no one to pick your wheat, you got no one to slaughter your cows, you're in big fucking trouble. So that's the start of it. They're not making as much revenue. They're not supplying as much food into the food chain, which, by the way, screws all of us. Our food supply is going to be fucked if this happens. So let's just say that. But they also did a lot of other things, right? They put in corporate tax breaks and they did all this other stuff. Now suddenly they don't have a pot to piss in. Their budget committee has gone back to work and they're trying to find places where they can find this money. And they've identified 165 million more in revenue that they can bring in. 65 million of it is from, well, let's just go ahead and raise the taxes on the corporations. Amazing how quickly the money pours in if you make everybody pay their fair share. But I digress. Anyway, they've also done some other things, cut some extra funding. They cut a major portion of funding to the University of Nebraska Medical Center, which is quite frightening for the people who work there and a lot of the research they're doing. Probably have to make a total separate video about that because university hospitals all across the nation are getting crushed right now because they're losing a lot of their funding. But one thing they've also decided to do was to take the cash out of their slush fund. Every state kind of has this emergency fund. And I get that they think, okay, this is an emergency. We got to use the slush fund. So they're putting their slush fund toward their budget deficit. I understand that. But what's happening is, in case you don't know, Nebraska is one of those, let's use the word socialist states, meaning they are one of those red states that gets more from the federal government than they put in. Okay, they get a ton of subsidies for their farmers. They get a ton of stuff. And sadly, there's a lot of people in Nebraska who are poor or even poverty level citizens. And they need government funding. They need things like Medicaid and SNAP benefits and those types of things. Well, when you've got the Doge dickheads going, nope, nope, cut it all off. We don't give a fuck who starves. We don't care about poor people. We don't care about children. Cut it all off. What's happening is the federal government will start giving less to Nebraska. And Nebraska is going to be expected to pull herself up by her bootstraps. Not if they've raided their slush fund. If they don't have any money left in their slush fund, they can't help their hungry and poor citizens. So again, it's all self-inflicted wounds because this is how they voted and they supported an administration that was going to slash. They supported an administration that said, no more brown people. They did this to themselves and it's very hard to feel sorry for them, right? There's a lot of people on here that are like, bye-bye. But it's a major hit to our food supply. I took some notes. Let me just tell you. They are the third largest producer of corn. They're a big producer of soybeans. They are top 15 producer of wheat. And I don't know if you knew this, but Nebraska, number one in popcorn. They're the number one producer of popcorn. We stand a risk to lose our popcorn, people. But that's not even what I want to talk about. They are one of the top producers of beef. If you've not, there are some exceptional cattle ranchers in Nebraska, and they provide a huge portion of America's high quality beef, but also pork, poultry, and wait for it, eggs. You think they're expensive now? You shut down the state of Nebraska, that's a big hit to the egg industry. Now, the what would be the cherry on the top of the fuck around and find out Sunday is that 43 days before the last election, Nebraska's state house made a Hail Mary to try to change their electoral college process. If you're not familiar, Nebraska has 5 electoral votes, but it's not a winner take all. 3 of the electoral college votes go to, however, those 3 congressional districts. So if 2 of those districts go blue, that's two electoral college to the Democrats and 1 to the Republicans. And then the other 2 are given to the person who wins, the party that wins the overall state. So if the Republicans win the total state, they would get that. So last year, the way it stood to be was that Donald Trump would probably get 4 electoral votes. Kamala Harris would get 1. 4 out of 5 isn't quite enough when you're a Trump-loving, conservative, middle America white man who happens to be in the Nebraska State House. They didn't even want the black lady to get even 1 vote. Oh, no. They tried to change 43 days before the election. They tried to change their electoral college process to a winner take all. And luckily it didn't pass. There was somebody in the state house that said, this is dumb, we're not doing it. So it was dead in the water. But my point being is that this state is led and probably is populated by people who were die-hard, rabid Trump supporters. People who will throw a Hail Mary at the last fucking minute because they wanted him to have an even bigger win. And now they're crying on TikTok because they might go bankrupt. If you're a blue dot in Nebraska, hang in there, maybe pack your bags, maybe go to Colorado. I'm so sorry this is happening to you, and I'm so sad it's gonna fuck our food supply for a very long time. But you fuck around and you find out.
Hey there. It is Not So Silent Night, and I am jumping on with a really sad heart. A sad heart and also a very angry one. So here in the state of Nebraska, we have had the start of the icy raids here. In Omaha and in Hastings, and I don't know where else, but those are the two that I've heard about. And families are being broken apart. People are being rounded up. People who are at their jobs. They're backbreaking 10 to 12 hour a day jobs working at these meat packing plants, which is not easy, which is difficult, which is dangerous work, are being rounded up. Children are now without their parents. People are scared, and then there are people who are gleefully clapping their hands because they say this is what they wanted. There's also a group of people that are still very silent and are not speaking up. So today here in Nebraska, my heart breaks. But my heart also rages, because I'm honestly at the point for all those that to continue to be willfully ignorant, to continue to be living in your little racist bubble. I just want to say fuck you. Fuck you. I'm tired of your meanness. I'm tired of your ugly, ugly hearts. And for many of you that I personally know that say that you are Christians, fuck you double, because you are not following Jesus. You are doing the exact opposite. So, yeah. There's not much else I can say today. This is pretty much just a crying post, a raging post. And to shout out to all of those of you that get it and that are protecting and loving all the people that you can. And as always, just go love your neighbor.
I voted for Donald J. Trump in the 2024 presidential election, and I am starting to regret my vote. When I voted for Donald Trump, I was under the impression that we would be getting rid of the undesirable illegal aliens. Now I have no one to work on my farm. What am I supposed to do? Pay them a living wage? This isn't handout city. I'm not giving these people no handouts. And how am I even supposed to do that anyway? I thought the plan was to tax the poors. Okay? I thought we were going to tax the poors. I make $25,000 a year. I'm not one of them. I'm not one of them poors. But why did my taxes raise? I thought us good folks were supposed to be getting tax cuts. That was what I thought. Plus, I'm white. Why did my taxes raise, and why do I have no one to work my farm? I do not understand this, and I know that this was not what Donald Trump meant to happen. I know that he doesn't want us good Trump supporter folks suffering, but we are. Donald Trump, please reverse this. I'm a white person. I am not supposed to be suffering. It was supposed to be the Mexican.
So this morning I ended up on Nebraska Talk, and it was a bunch of people crying, why does anybody care about Nebraska? When we voted for Kamala Harris, when I cast my vote for Harris, that was me saying, I care about you and I want you to survive and thrive. Okay, you knew better than anybody else that your state thrives and survives off of migrants' backs. Okay? And instead of them waiting for ICE to come, they decided to peace out before they could come and get them. I don't know what to tell you guys anymore. This is what you voted for. Whether you like it or not, whether you want to believe it or not, this is exactly what you voted for. And now you're feeling it. What do you want us to do? You want a government handout? That's socialism. You voted against that. No. Sadly, the reality is that you'll probably have to sell a lot of your farms for pennies on the dollar to large corporations and manufacturers. But don't worry, they'll probably let you work there for minimum wage.
So, apparently, Nebraska is going out of business soon, within the next 1 to 2 quarters. Why? Well, farmers to be exact, or farms. They can't seem to find anyone to work their fields. Nebraska, I wonder why that is. Could it be the racist rapist that you voted for that literally told you he was going to deport about 80% of your workforce, but you voted for him anyway because you wanted your bragging rights? That's right, you wanted to own those libs. Well, congratulations, Nebraska. You won your bragging rights, but now you lost your livelihood, and I have 0 fucks to give to you.
I'm seeing a lot of hate towards these Nebraskan farmers, and I would love to hate on them. But we have to root for them, because if these small farms go out of business, who's going to buy up these small farms? It's going to be the corporations. And we're going to be even more fucked than we are now. They're just going to be able to rule everything, price gouge us on everything. So, as much as I don't want to be supportive, we kind of have to support them. And, do anything we can to help them out, even though they voted for the wrong person.
Over 50% of people farming in the U.S. right now are going to retire in the next 10 years. Of those people, they own over 50% of the farmland in this country, which means what is going to happen when they retire in the next 10 years? What is going to happen to this farmland? Who is going to take their place? The amount of people coming in to take farmers' place since the 1980s has dropped dramatically. I am by no means a commercial farmer over here trying to work hundreds of acres with a tractor, but I do have nearly 7 acres of land that I am trying to work by myself with a wheelbarrow and a pitchfork. Here's a look at what I got started doing this week. I used to think you needed dozens of acres to be a farmer or turn a profit or grow the food your family needs. I am quickly learning you need less than an acre to do all of those things. I'm also not the first person to claim this. I've seen so many other farmers on here doing exactly that. If you're feeling the call to do anything like this in any way, I'm here to tell you it's not necessarily easy, but it is possible, and you only need a few acres. You only need 1 acre or a roof on a building. If you're wondering how to buy this acreage, I did it with a loan I got at Farm Credit East, not the USDA. Farm Credit is a nationwide network, and I got a loan for undeveloped farmland. There were no utilities at this land. I'm currently paying the loan back as we speak while I figure out what the heck I'm doing here.
Boy, Nebraska's got themselves in quite a mess, don't they? It was a while back that a lot of them were talking about losing their ranches and their farms. There was even a family that said they had a 300-year-old ranch that they were going to lose. I thought 300 years old. I wonder what the Native Americans think about that. However, they've voted strongly for President Donald Trump, and now a lot of them can't even keep workers on their ranches and farms to keep things going. And now you have people going straight into the businesses and rounding people up there, Omaha. Well, I guess sometimes you have to learn the hard way. It's not always about, well, that is for some. Anyways, have a great day, Nebraska. Have the day you deserve. Bye.
Dear Nebraska farmers, I have a question for you. So, you realize that you were employing your farms with undocumented workers, because there's no way that you didn't know that, right? You realize you're also breaking the law by doing so. But you then rail against those same undocumented workers that's doing the work and making you money so that they can be deported. And now you're crying and whining and trying to skin and grin to Donald Trump to stop him from deportations when you supported it overwhelmingly. It's kind of like the Venezuelans, right? When right before the election, they were like, I will vote for Donald Trump. Oh, 2 weeks later, he used us. How are y'all feeling right now? Bye.